Support for Veterans Corner Radio is made possible by M&M Printing and the Observer News of Ruskin, Florida.
Welcome to Veterans Corner Radio, a show dedicated to providing information to all those who have served our country's military and to their families. Now, here is your host, combat veteran and educator, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Joe Mulberger.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Joe Mulberger, and you're listening to Veterans Corner Radio. Today we have former United States Marine Corps Major Ross Goodman, who served as, Ross, I think we can agree, all Marines, to include lawyers, are guns first. But you were a lawyer in the Marine Corps, but you had a very unique way of stepping in. But let's go back a little ways. Let's find out more about Ross before we get into the details of Marine Corps, because it just didn't start from one day to the next. Where are you originally from, and what month and year were you born?
Well, I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. My dad was a lawyer, and my mom worked as an executive assistant in a casino. I have two brothers and one sister. My oldest brother now is an oncologist, also in Las Vegas. My younger brother is a judge in Las Vegas, and my younger sister works as a psychologist at UMC, which is a hospital, a county hospital, where she helps and assists families who have burn patients.
Wow. Now, what year were you born?
February 1970.
1970. Okay. So tell us about growing up. Did you play sports or get involved in any specific activities that kind of chased after as you were going through those developmental years?
Well, Joe, believe it or not, when I grew up and I was in high school in Las Vegas back in 1980s, I was one of 8 high schools. Now there's over 70 high schools in Las Vegas. So it gives you an idea on how fast Las Vegas has grown. But I was a competitive tennis player growing up. I played national tournaments. That was my thing. I'm not sure how I got into it, but Las Vegas was a great place to learn how to play tennis. A guy that people may know of, Andre Agassi, came from Las Vegas. I played with him every single day. We're the same age, and he was one of my close friends growing up. And so, I didn't realize how good Andre was until he left Las Vegas to go to Florida at a place called Bolletari's Tennis Academy at the age of 13. And then the following year, 14, he turned pro. And then I realized I'm not as good as I thought I was, because Andre was my doubles partner and I didn't have him anymore. So I quickly kind of fell into rankings, at least with the doubles. But I was always ranked in the, top 100, and I was a competitive tennis player, and that's what I did in Las Vegas.
So competitive tennis, know a very little bit about. It's the courts. There's grass courts and there's clay courts. And is it like a checkoff point of, hey, this person has cleared on all of the surfaces that the tennis courts are made of?
No, not really. I mean, in Las Vegas, like in most communities, it's hard court. So it was asphalt. And, the Las Vegas summers, it's already 110 degrees. And then it's usually about 15 degrees hotter in the summer. So it wasn't quite Marine Corps boot camp, but you quickly found out if you were tough in Las Vegas by, playing tennis in the summer months for 4 or 5 hours and see who lasted.
So you could have, based on high schools alone, in today's terms, you could have your own sort of international collective of your own, the Las Vegas Open. With 8 high schools, did you find yourself traveling as a high school student for that competitive edge? And if so, where did it take you?
Right. So that's what happened, because there was only 8 high schools. There was, 5 to 10 people on a regular basis who were good tennis players in Las Vegas, and they didn't really play for high schools. But, I was a team player. So the head coach of Clark High School, where I went, begged me to play at least doubles. And so I played doubles and won the state championship. But that's not saying much for the reasons that you just said, that there was only 8 high schools back in the day. So if you were good at all, you would try to play national tournaments and then work your way into semi-nationals and then the premier national tournaments. And when you traveled and did that, you did play on other surfaces, grass, clay, everything.
Did you find that challenging when you were a hardcore kind of person, getting used to a new surface? I mean, in the Air Force or in the flying environment, you have grass strips and you have the asphalt, and then you have triple R, which is the horrible thing to land on. But is it something that you have to get used to?
You do have to get used to it, but still as a junior tennis player, it's not like the professionals where, there's not a lot of margin of error. If you were, very, competitive and you were athletic, you can kind of close that gap even if you didn't have as much experience on one surface that the other players did.
And where did it take you outside of Vegas or maybe outside of Nevada as you were doing the competitions?
Oh, the majority of our tournaments were in California. Back then, that was the most competitive state for tennis players. And then we played national tournaments, along the way. There was a very famous one to this day called Kalamazoo, which is in Michigan. And that was the premier national tournament for if you were a nationally ranked tennis player. I played down south in Houston in a national tournament. There was a couple regional tournaments we played up in Salt Lake City. So it just ran the gambit.
Now, you get out of high school, as a tennis player, was there money in it for like scholarships and going to school?
Yes, but I wanted to go to USD. That's where I was fixated on, which is University of San Diego. I just liked the area. I liked the tennis team. So the schools that were offering me like scholarships were top 20 schools. By like, for example, the University of Utah was ranked number 21 in the country, but I didn't want to go play and spend my college career in Salt Lake City. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I wanted to be with a more competitive school in San Diego. So I had to walk on to that team, which I did. And then unfortunately, did something very reckless, which I never did even as a junior. I never skied. I never did anything that could put me at risk on breaking something. And, I was a freshman in a dorm and we went outside after drinking all night and we were on the soccer field and everybody decided to play tackle football. And, my roommate got his knee busted in three different places and we just thought he was being, a pussy. And so we didn't do anything. And, only to find out that he called the ambulance and took him to the hospital and he was in bad shape for about a week and he had multiple breaks. I woke up the next day to go to the tennis courts where I was supposed to go and I put my key in the ignition and I couldn't even turn the key. So then I was like, okay, well, I just got a kink or something. I tried to do it again and then I started to sweat because I worked my whole career so I could play competitive tennis at the college level, and I knew there was something wrong with my wrist. So I worked my way up to go see the doctor for the sports teams, and he said, "I got bad news for you. It looks like you tore something in your wrist." So then they sent me to an orthopedic doctor off campus, and the doctor said, "Okay, we're going to shoot dye in your wrist, and whatever shows up on the monitor as black means that it's torn." The whole thing was black. So I was out for a whole year of playing tennis, and at that level, you really can't come back. So I would have had to transfer schools to go play for like a 20 to 30 school and then come back the year later, or just quit playing tennis. And so I quit playing tennis because I didn't want to play professional tennis, even though people at my level do, right? They're ranked 150 in the world, 200 in the world. But that wasn't for me at that point. When you play tennis your whole life, and if you're not going to be in the top 100, there's some people who don't want to go, live in a car tour Europe so you can be 120 in the world without being paid. So at that point, as a freshman and sophomore, a lot of my friends were Marine Corps Roxy at University of San Diego. They go, "Ross, why don't you come down and run the obstacle courses with me?" I had no idea about the military at that point. I had no idea about the Marine Corps. They were just my friends. So I said, sure. I was an athlete. I had no sport at the time. I had very, running, working out. So I'd go down to MCRD San Diego, which is people know if you fly into San Diego, you see the boot camp right underneath the planes. And so that's where I went. I spent, a couple years there running courses, drinking with the Marines, doing that sort of stuff. And then finally, a captain said to me, "What are you doing after college, Ross?" And I said, "Well, I'm not sure. I think I'm gonna go to law school." And he said, "Well, you can do both in the Marine Corps at the same time, except it's really cool if you're a lawyer in the Marine Corps because you get to advise, you get to be a staff judge advocate where you advise the command on rules of engagement and on operations. You're in the field, you get to go on deployment." So he made it sound really cool, which it was, although I never participated in any of that, unfortunately. And I decided to go into the Marine Corps at that point.
All right. Every Marine is a gun. So you go in not as a lawyer, because right now you've got an undergrad degree. What was your undergrad degree in? From
It was in sociology.
sociology from University of California in San Diego.
No, University of San Diego, which is different. It's a private school, it's a Jesuit school.
Okay.
Yes, University of California, San Diego is part of the UC system.
Got it. All right. So you're part of the Jesuit school and you got an undergrad degree in sociology. This Marine captain says, "Come our way." Now you're looking at, hey, pro tennis is out. Now I'm looking for the next something to do. And so you're looking to become a second lieutenant, not a first lieutenant for 6 months and then a captain like other service components do. You're going to be that gun. So you go through Quantico, right?
Right. So within 4 days of graduating from college, I was in Quantico, Virginia, having no exposure to the military, having no exposure to what boot camp's going to be like, never firing a gun before, never held a gun, never fired a gun. I was probably one of the least experienced people that ever stepped in Quantico, Virginia. But as it turned out, it served me well, Joe, because I had no bad habits. Expert training, marksman training in the Marine Corps is that you're trained by some of the best shooters. They have some of the best training. So I had no bad habits. I'm listening. I'm good at that. And I ended up being a double expert. And I did very well in Quantico. And then,
Hang on, Ross,
yes.
tell us what a double expert is. We got a whole audience out there, and a lot of people go, what? What does that mean?
Well, you have to be certified in the Marine Corps in the M16 and in a 9 millimeter. And so, some people can be an expert in one and a marksman in another or a sharpshooter. I happen to be the highest, which was a double expert in both guns.
So you're finding you're a quick learner. Just like having to deal with grass on the surface, you're picking it up as the Marine Corps is pouring it on you.
I'm a quick learner, but we have a 50 caliber that you don't even know what a 50 caliber is, and then they teach you for like 2 days on how to assemble and disassemble and how. Well, I'm like, you know, I was sweating for a little bit, but I persisted and I learned how to assemble, disassemble all the firearms that we had, and I liked it. Right, I was interested in it. So when you're interested in something, you're going to pick it up. I think that much quicker, and then after that. I think it was 10 weeks. I'm not sure if it was 12 weeks long or 10 weeks. I don't remember at this point. But like 2 days after that, Joe, I was starting law school at the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma.
So you had a college scholarship of a different type where the Marines have picked you up and they're going to send you to law school now.
No, the Marine Corps doesn't do that. So they don't give you a scholarship. You still had to do it on your own. Like the other branches do that stuff, but not the Marine Corps. You have to go to your training first, and then basically you become a Marine Corps and whatever you have, that's what but they're not putting you through law school like other branches do. So,
But when you come out of law school, they're going to bring you back in as a lawyer.
right. Well, I mean, not yet. Not yet. So,
All right.
you know, like 4 days later, I was starting law school at the University of Tulsa. They gave me orders, and I was like, I didn't know anything about the active reserves, even though that was what my commission was in. It was a second lieutenant in the active reserves, and that says Marine Corps active reserves. Well, as I should have known from being a kid and watching commercials, it's 1 week in a month and 2 weeks out of the year, right? So I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I'm in the middle of the country. There's only Marine Corps bases on the East Coast, West Coast. They don't care who I am. I'm a second lieutenant in law school. So this is going to be interesting. They don't even tell me what I'm going to do, right? Thought, well, maybe they forgot about me. I'll just do law school and then we'll see what happens. Well, sure enough, I get something in the mail. It's an order for me to go report to Fort Sill, which is an Army base. in Lawton, Oklahoma, which is about a 2.5 hour drive from Tulsa. I have no idea what that is. I have no idea. I've never stepped foot on an Army base before. All I have is my Marine Corps stuff, right? My gear, as you can imagine. So I go down there, and it was not a warm reception, to say the least. I was a Marine Corps officer at the time in law school, having no arty experience whatsoever, and now I'm supposed to be attached to an artillery unit as a second lieutenant. So I did that for 3 years that I was in law school in Tulsa, and probably about within the second year, towards the latter part of the second year, right when my time was up, everybody started to like me. I started making friends, but it took a good 2 years for that to happen.
So you finish law school. How you end up out of Oklahoma and back into the Marine Corps?
So every Marine, after you go through OCS, then you got to go through 6 months of infantry training school, which they call TBS, which is the basic school. Usually you do that in consecutive time, right? You graduate college, you become a second lieutenant, and then from OCS, you go to TBS. But I had this 3 year break because I was in law school, which is, you know, not the norm. So I go back there and I do 6 months of the basic school, I graduate. I think at that point I'm a first lieutenant because in theory I've been in for 3.5 years at that point, even if I was on the weekends with the Army unit. And then I go to Newport, Rhode Island, Naval Justice School. So Department of Navy, where all Marine Corps and Navy lawyers go to be certified as a judge advocate in the, Navy, in the Department of Navy. So, the only cool thing I have that, I remember about that is one of my instructors was on the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, Justice Scalia. And at the time, he was an appellate judge, I believe, for the Second Circuit. I'm not sure, but he came up and taught 4 weeks. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. We got to know all our instructors, and that was fun. And then from there, from Rhode Island, I get orders to go to Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point in North Carolina, which is about 2 hours away from Camp Lejeune, where the Harrier pilots in the Marine Corps were stationed. And then I did about close to 3 years there as a defense lawyer and prosecutor. And then at that time, it was 2000, and I decided to leave the Marine Corps and go try my hand in private practice as a lawyer.
How's that worked out?
Well, I've done I've done well. I would not have done it any differently, although, depending on how much I've had to drink on the weekend, I'm like, God, I should have stayed in the Marine Corps. I was slated to go to Okinawa as a prosecutor, and the sky was the limit.
Let's come back to that. So, okay, so alcohol today follows suit with where you got those beginnings with Marines showing you how it works. But while you were still in, you had a couple of interesting opportunities, and we get a decision point. We make that decision, and it leads us to what's next. Obviously, you start with tennis. That doesn't work out. You hang out with buddies that are Marines to be. You end up as a Marine. That certainly wasn't on the list of things to do as you're heading off to college. Now you've gone through the basic school. You've gone through Naval Justice School. You're at Cherry Point. Are you in defense or are you on prosecution? Which side are you on?
I mean, I did both, and really three, right? I did defense, prosecution, which they call trial counsel, and I did legal assistance, which is advising Marines on the civil aspects of everything regarding, you know, wills, divorce, that sort of stuff. So I ran the gambit, but I made my, reputation, I think, as a defense lawyer because I had about 4 or 5 not guilties in general court martials, which I was told was unheard of. Usually, when a general officer convenes a general court martial, a staff judge advocate is telling the general, this Marine's guilty and we're going to get a guilty verdict. He's going to go do whatever, 14 years in Leavenworth, and I'm getting these not guilties.
So that jettisoned attention to you, potentially bringing you where?
So I had an offer to go be a major in Okinawa, which is a chief trial counsel billet. And that's kind of, as a lawyer in the Marine Corps, that's kind of a spot that you want to hit if you want to stay in long term. And that should put you in good stead to get promoted from there.
Wow. But things got in the way there, and you decided not to go that route. But was it then that you decided it was time to get out, or did you have yet another assignment to take care of?
No, I got out at that point, right? So I was done with my active reserve. So I got out and then I went back to Las Vegas, started my private practice. And then I got requests from two different commands. One was, which, the show was going at the time, it was NCIS at Cap Pendleton. And they were looking for a major to be a staff judge advocate. And the other was, as a lawyer, which was more interesting to me, even though the NCIS bill would have been cooler, because especially since it was on TV at the time, was the Navy Marine Corps Court of Appeals. So I said to myself, listen, I'm really young. When's the only other time I'm going to be able to argue in front of a circuit court? Like here we had the Ninth Circuit, Justice Scalia was on the Second Circuit, right? So I used that as an opportunity. So I did that for another 2.5 years. And then they wanted me to do more arguments and do more appeals, and it was impeding on my private practice. So I had no, other choice but to decline any more active reserve assignments.
So how long have you had your private practice? When did you start? What year?
I started late 2000.
So 2000. You've been doing it for a couple of years now. And is it all forms of law that you take care of?
Primarily, I do what people, if they look me up, the criminal cases come up because that's what gets the most publicity and newsworthy action. If there's a murder case or something like that, nobody's going to really write about a breach of contract case, right? But I do a lot of that sort of stuff for major companies like the UFC in Las Vegas, Allegiant Airlines. Right, because I'm a trial lawyer. So at the end of the day, I'm pretty good in the courtroom, whether it's civil or criminal. So I have a mixed bag at this point.
So let's say somebody's out there and they're in Vegas and they're in a jam. The place to reach out to go online is www.goodmanlawgroup.com, which is www.goodmanlawgroup.com. And you can help some folks out, you and your team, right?
For sure. And I do it every single day. And that's why I'm still doing it, Joe. Much like how people like to provide service for their country. I mean, it's not just a money thing. We provide services for people because, believe it or not, people make mistakes. It doesn't make them a bad person. And you want to get them through the, path of least resistance. So there's not collateral consequences for the rest of their life.
Sounds like if on a military standpoint, you were getting folks not guilty, found not guilty, it sounds like you have a pretty good track record in the civilian side as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got to say this has been an absolutely unique standalone presentation and interview with former United States Marine Corps Major Ross Goodman, who's got a law practice all of his own, Goodman Law Group in Las Vegas. Look him up if you get the chance. And if you were to go back and talk to your 18-year-old self just as you're getting out of high school, Ross, what would you tell that guy?
Do it exactly the same way. I think everybody is like in Israel. I think everybody should have to do 2 years in the military. I think we'd have a much more stable and cohesive society. I cannot say enough good things about the Marine Corps. It made me who I am today. I think everybody should have the same exposure to the military.
Well, Ross, here on Veterans Corner Radio, we say our veterans are worth their value in gold. You certainly not only set the standard, but exceeded it over these several years. We thank you for your service, and we thank you for what you've continued to do on Civvy Street, taking that. I was once a Marine Corps lawyer, and I'm always going to be a Marine, and now I'm out on Civvy Street doing the good that I'm doing. Thanks so much, Ross, for your time.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
You've been listening to Veterans Corner Radio with your host, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Joe Mulberger. The views expressed on this program are those of Joe and his guests and our opinions based on the best available information. In matters of law or governmental regulation, it will always be best to check with the appropriate agency. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us for the next program on Veterans Corner Radio.